Good day, Jonathan.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you and invite you in our homeopathy club, Salensia.
Thank
So,
you.
the Russian audience is very well aware of your role in Homeopathy International. You visited Russia many times before with your lectures and seminars. I personally very well remember your Kali Souls in 2004 at the Russian branch of the London faculty. Then there were insects, birds, and plants, and many other things that you delivered in Russia. However, the Russian homeopathic community is growing, and the new generation may not be familiar with your work. And some of the questions are quite generic about your background. So, we know that you studied zoology and then medicine. How and why did you come to homeopathy after that?
It's a good question. I think you can answer questions like that on different levels, can't you? You know, you can be rational about it and say what the sensible reasons for doing it or not so sensible reasons were, but actually it was more of an instinctive thing. In fact, even when I went to medical school, before I even had an interview to go to medical school, I went to the local library, um, to the medical section, and the first book I pulled down that took my interest was on alternative medicine.
Mhm.
And that's what I read before I went to the medical school for an interview. Um, and in my third year, as a medical student, I spent time at the homeopathic hospital in London. And in our fourth year at my university, you had to do a 9-month research project, uh, original research project, and I did a double-blind placebo-controlled trial of house dust mite 30C. And I like to think I proved homeopathy works while I was a medical student because the results actually were spectacular. Um, and on that subject, I thought this was 1983, and I thought this is fantastic. When everyone had to present their results to the whole faculty of medicine. I thought this is great. Everyone's going to say, oh, wow, homeopathy works. This is so interesting. So, I stood up for my half an hour, made a presentation, and the reaction was just deafening silence. It's like, okay, next, you know, no one was interested. Um, of course, after that, people started laughing at homeopathy and then they started attacking us. And
Mhm.
it's like Gandhi said, first people ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they attack you, and then they join you. Well, I think we're maybe at the just in between being attacked and joined. At least I like to think so. But anyway, so in answer to your question, Olga, it was really just an instinctive thing. I already had my feet in two different boats. And after I qualified in medicine, I did my hospital work, I was registered as a doctor. I realized that those two boats were rapidly going in different directions. And that if I wanted to really do homeopathy properly, I
Mhm.
had to jump out of the conventional boat and get firmly into the homeopathy boat. And that's what I did. So it was really just a very deep sense of knowing that's what I should be doing.
Mhm. Yes. And what is there in homeopathy that keeps you involved for so many years? Anything that you consider special or peculiar that deserves your ongoing interest?
I think, again, that's a very good question. First thing I'd say is that I think Homeopathy is medicine of this new age.
Mhm,
Um, that it's not just, a small thing. According to Indian cosmology, in the year 1700, we entered what is called in their terms, Sanskrit terms, Dwapara Yuga, which is the atomic age. It's the age, and it's a 2,400 year period. So we're 300 years into it now. An age in which mankind discovers and utilizes atomic and electrical energies.
mhm,
And we've invented electricity, we use atomic energy, but essentially the vital force in a human being is the electrical energy in the body. So in a microcosmic sense, vibrational healing that energetic medicine
mhm,
is the primary modality of the new age in terms of medicine. And I think as we, go into the coming generations, we'll be using vibrational medicine, electrical medicine, energetic medicine more and more, and it will become a primary modality. And of course, I think homeopathy will be the number one therapy. So I think we're still at the process of building the foundations for coming centuries of medicine. And yeah, there is a sense of mission, a sense of responsibility to try and build those foundations as securely as possible. And what that really means is sticking to the fundamental principles. It doesn't mean you have to rigidly follow a particular way of practicing homeopathy, but I think you do have to stick to the fundamental principles as laid down by Hahnemann. Um, he was in the vanguard of this introduction of medicine, and of course, his teaching is still ahead of his time. It's ahead of our time. But those principles, we need to stick to them and not add things, subtract things, but stick to that. And on a personal level, I've never been enjoying my medical practice more than I do now.
mhm,
Um, the wonderful thing about homeopathy is that it really just gets better and better if you're open, if you're learning, if you're embracing the experience that you have learning from your patients. It just gets better and better, and the results get better, the cases get more exciting. Um, so, and I wonder how many doctors can say that. I
yeah,
qualified 40 years ago. How many doctors in other fields can say, oh, I'm enjoying my practice more than ever now? I know there are very good, dedicated conventional doctors who do put their heart and soul into their work. And I think they will be the people who could say that, because there is a sense of service, a sense of, really wanting to help others as well as possible. And I think, that is the greatest reward, isn't it? Serving others. And homeopathy can enable that at a very deep level. And I think that's the basic reason. It's like what greater joy and fulfillment can there be than seeing somebody deeply cured of suffering? It's a privilege,
mhm,
be able to facilitate that. So I think that's what it comes down to, helping others. Um, it is profoundly rewarding.
mhm. Yes, yes, I agree. Thank you. And what is your most favorite aspect of homeopathy, and what causes difficulties in your practice these days?
The favorite is connecting with the source. It's where you are able to take a patient deep into their state. So, yes, you embrace all the data, the story, and the symptoms, and physical experiences and also the mental emotional state. But when you can take the patient so deep into their inner experience that they're speaking source language, well, we might call it sensation material or speaking from the source. And why is that my favorite? Two reasons, one practical and one experiential. Practically, it's my favorite because that material is so helpful. It can point directly to the remedy, or at least to that small group of remedies that you need. It's the most reliable information. Experientially, connecting with that essence in the patient and then matching it with, the similimum, the essence of some remedy, something from the natural world, or sometimes, not from the natural world, but some substance, that unique one thing in, many millions that they could need, connecting with that source, that's an exciting process, but it's more than exciting. It's a soulful experience because you're actually connecting with the essence of that thing, the soul of that thing, if you like, the archetypal pattern, the thought pattern, the intelligent energy pattern that creates the physical form.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're resonating with something at that deep level, that level of consciousness and energy, that is the real world. We,
Mm-hmm.
this material world is not the real world. This material world is a mirage. It's an illusion. It seems so solid. It seems so permanent. It isn't. It,
Mm-hmm.
it's fake in a way. It's a trick. And this visible level is actually unreal. Unreal in the sense that it's certainly imperfect, but also impermanent. Whereas these archetypes that lie behind, that create and sustain the material forms, that's the real world. Real because they're perfect. Those archetypes are perfect and they're permanent, or relatively so. Um, and the soul loves that. It's exciting for the soul. When you connect with things at that deep level, it's thrilling to the soul. So that's my favorite part of homeopathy. Um,
For me,
what do I find most difficulty with? Well, how long have you got? I mean, homeopathy can be extremely challenging, can't it, for many reasons. I suppose, what is most difficult is when you're struggling to find the remedy for somebody, especially if they're suffering. And, I accept that for some reason, there'll always be a proportion of patients who you cannot get better, and it's beyond our control. And accepting that, you do your best and then you let it go. Uh,
mhm,
but that's hard, isn't it? It's not not easy to be detached in that way. But yeah, when you're struggling with a patient, that's the hardest thing.
so thank you. Mm. And this time, um, you are going to tell us about the remedies of the sixth and seventh series of the periodic table. What was your driving force to pay attention to these groups? And what is their importance and peculiarity in your view?
One remarkable thing in my practice is that I found that for many, many years, I get cases coming in clusters, in groups. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, for a few months, nearly every case I see might be a bird remedy, and that may go on for a year or two, and then you literally don't see another bird for 5 years. Um, and that's happened again and again with many different cases. And that's happened several years ago, it certainly happened that I got one after another, some very interesting cases from row 7. And then in the last couple of years, a lot of lanthanide cases, having,
Mhm.
quite often see colleagues presenting cases of certain remedies or read up on journals saying, I've never seen a case from that group, why not? And then suddenly you get a dozen in the space of a year. And so that's happened with Rose Evan and with the lanthanides. And actually, apart from the satisfaction of seeing good results, my greatest joy is sharing that experience. And I think certainly my practice, I think everyone's homeopathic practice is non-random. It, I think there is a hidden pattern, might say, at work. And in the last year, the really interesting group of remedies that I've been seeing, the biggest cluster ever in my practice is of the imponderable remedies.
Mhm.
Having, again, never seen a case for, more than 35 years and saying, oh, why don't I ever see any imponderables apart from positronium?
Mhm.
And suddenly in this avalanche of cases, I think it makes life easier because you're, certainly on the alert for that, and you can easily pick up the patterns, the recurring themes, the recurring experiences and expressions of patients. But also I see it as like a gift in a way that I'm given that, and I like to share it. So because that understanding the recurring themes, so sensation if it's there, but the recurring themes, meaning the issues that are common within that remedy group, the kind of pathologies, but especially the expressions, the words, the phrases, the
Mhm.
recurring themes in a remedy group is so incredibly helpful. You just need to hear several of these recurring themes in a group and you say, and in an instant, you're taken out of this kind of fog of surrounded by a whole lot of data, and you can't really form it into any coherent. And then suddenly you get this idea, this is a remedy from row 4. And then the whole lot just coalesces into a meaningful whole, and the whole thing makes sense. You get this holistic picture. And
Mhm.
so um, I can't even remember what the question was now.
So, about remedies of 6th and 7th series.
Yeah.
But I agree with Imponderable. I also interested in this group, and we did proving of a few planets.
I know. Yes, you did Jupiter, didn't you, and Neptune?
We did Jupiter, Saturn, we did Mercury, and Mars.
Wow. Okay.
Russian Sun, Russian Sun, and Russian Venus.
Uh,
So now we complete homeopathy September.
that's fascinating.
Mhm.
Fascinating. I think they're very important remedies for the present age.
Yes, I didn't expect before, but now I use it every day.
Really.
Yes, sometimes in parallel first remedy. Sometimes I gave maybe once per month, but I gave some of planets. Now it's my new experience. Maybe last year.
It's the biggest cluster of remedies for me um, at the moment.
So, next question. And how often do you prescribe lanthanides in your country, in Great Britain? Is this group common there?
Well, I know colleagues, I think it is quite common. Um, if you look at the main themes of the lanthanides, there's, I would say, a kind of humanitarian approach to life, or you might even say humanist, which um, has a kind of religious connotation in that humanists tend to be people who are very sincere about serving others, serving mankind, looking after the planet, but they may be not religious, not there's not so much of a spiritual dimension. So the humanists, in the UK, that's really it's a kind of non-religious group which still has religious principles, if you see what I mean, but they may not don't maybe don't believe in God. Um, so there's that humanitarian idea and the idea of autonomy, about being independent. And, that's quite a strong streak in the UK. Um, as you can see from our recent history, really. Uh, and it's been said that lanthanides are quite commonly indicated for homeopaths. Personally, I haven't seen that so much, but I know colleagues have. But there are several colleagues of mine who have used the lanthanides a lot in the UK with success and talked about them a lot. Yeah, so I think they are important remedies. Yes.
Okay. And what method of case taking do you consider most applicable to come to a lanthanide or actinide prescription?
I would say, this is interesting about case taking in that, homeopathy is individualized medicine, isn't it? And
Yeah.
that means that we choose a remedy that's exactly right, hopefully, and potency and frequency of dosage. All of these things are forms of individualization. I think case taking equally needs to be individualized. And yes, one does have a certain framework to a degree, but I think actually the more I've practiced, the more that framework has become looser and less structured. I won't allow patients to ramble in areas that are not helpful. In fact, I would say my case taking is much more focused now than it used to be. It's become more focused, but at the same time, it's become much less directed by me and much more directed by the patient. So
Mhm.
allowing, just picking up on whatever, two things especially, what carries the most energy and impact when the person says it, but also, what is most strange or unique or that you've never heard before, and focusing in on those things. Um, Frederick Schroyans has a term which I really like. He calls it what is most strong and striking in a case. And, that is his version of strange, rare, and peculiar. Um, but I like strong and striking because it emphasizes these two things. What has the most impact when you hear it? What you sit up and you think, whoa, you know, that's that's powerful, that's disturbing, or that's interesting. But also, what phrases, words, expressions, experiences that you've never heard before, the striking aspect, and going with that.
Mhm.
Because what I've seen with people who are early in their homeopathic careers is that they can be very good at like covering all the bases, if you like. If you have a idea, you go through all the systems, the head and the stomach and the rectum and
Mhm. Mhm.
and you get a whole lot of data, but it's all flat. So you make an hour and a half worth of data, and it's like, okay, what's it telling me? Not a lot, because you haven't penetrated into the case. You haven't got under the skin. You haven't gone towards the essence, towards the source, at least, getting in that direction, because when you go deeper, then you get more individualized expressions, don't you? And how do you do that? By following, what is strong, what is striking in the case.
Mm-hmm.
So, with lanthanides and row 7, I think actually that process is quite easy because, like, when we look at the row 7 cases, for example, they're pretty unusual people. And so already you're on the front foot when it comes to following what's unusual. Pretty soon they start telling you things that you don't hear often. So, that makes it easy to tap into that strong and striking aspect. And then with the lanthanides also, this kind of, it's easy because the autonomy is such a strong theme. This, I've got to do it my way. That freedom of thought, freedom of action, independence, it comes through usually very strongly. So you know where you are on the map quite soon. And then you just, once you're at that point, in a way, that's a nice place to be because you can kind of, okay, I can forget about 99% of the materia medica. This is where we are. And it's just, I'm going to enjoy the ride of letting this person tell me which of that group they need, which lanthanide, and how do we do that? Well, what is most unique? The strange, rare, peculiar expressions, or just one or two or three really good rubrics. I like to call them killer rubrics. This
Mm-hmm.
repertory comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Working in this way of group themes and group sensations, it does not exclude repertory. It does not exclude conventional materia medica improving it. It's beautiful to bring all these methods together. Roshan Sankaran's called it synergy, hasn't it? And this where all those things meet at one point,
Mm-hmm.
that's your remedy. So I consider myself a classical homeopath, and even though I'll take whatever's coming in case taking. I'm not fussy, but rather than me direct it and say, okay, this is the way I take a case, and I'm going to fit my patient into that way, whether they like it or not. No, that's not homeopathy. You have to let them express their unique nature, and you're not going to do that if you're trying to fit them into a format. You have to, at least to some degree, allow that unique expression. And yes, you use your particular set of skills and tools. It's interesting, isn't it? Because everyone practices homeopathy in their own way. And so I would never say to people, look, you've got to do it the way I do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine for us to learn from each other. Absolutely. I've learned so much from different people, but you have to assimilate what works for you from what other people say and do. And from reading, you have to make it part of yourself. Because if you're saying, okay, this is me, and then here's my patient, and I'm going to use this method that someone else uses, that method gets in the way. It's like an obstacle to your direct perception of that patient. You have to assimilate what's good from that method into yourself,
Mm-hmm.
then allow receive the case from the person directly to yourself. This is my view, because that thing in the way that blocks intuition. And intuition, the more I practice homeopathy, the more I consider intuition
Mm-hmm.
the central idea. And intuition is not guessing. Intuition comes at the end of a process of very still, silent receiving. This is the unprejudiced observer. That's really what Samuel Hahnemann's talking about when he talks about an unprejudiced observer. At the deepest understanding of that expression. That's intuition. That's direct perception of that person without any obscuring restlessness of mind or theorizing or putting our ideas in the way. So, and that intuition arises naturally as a result of deep calmness in ourselves. So I think that's the most important thing in any case taking, that calm receptivity, just listening to the expressions that are unique and ultimately at a very deep level connecting with the source of that disturbance in the person.
So I got it. The intuition is the best method for case taking.
You agree?
Good. So, and there is an idea that the periodic laws, or rather the concept of series and stages of the table, are applicable to other kingdoms. What is your opinion? Or to put it more specifically, do you recognize lanthonide or actinide qualities in non-mineral groups of remedies?
I'm not really qualified to answer that question because I have not investigated that idea. Mostly it's, I would say, because I haven't had time to do it, but I suppose, you find time for what appears important to you, don't you? One way or another, you'll find time for it, or, look into something. And why haven't I found time for it? I've never actually been very attracted to that idea, rightly or wrongly. So I'm not going to dismiss it by any means. And the little bits I've heard about it, it seems quite interesting, and I can see how it makes sense. But on the other hand, I was talking previously about things kind of getting in the way. Uh, a system needs to, again, if you can assimilate those ideas and then just, and then use them spontaneously, use them without it being an obstacle, then I'm perfectly happy with it. But like I say, I'm not really qualified to answer because I haven't learnt it and I haven't tried to use it, so I can't really judge. But I'm not particularly attracted to that idea for some reason.
Okay. So thank you very much. And thank you very much for this interview, that you find time for us. And we will look forward to meeting you at the lectures in February in our school, in our Science Club. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, Olga. My pleasure. And I look forward very much to sharing time with Russian colleagues.
Thank you.